Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction and recovery. Join your hosts,
the Podfather, Jersey Ed,
as they break the silence and speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, friendsandrecoverypodcast.com. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
And I'm Jersey Ed, live from Studio G today, guys. And
Jeffrey Zeizel.
Jeffrey Zeizel, a
That's
guest
right.
again. Jeff, thank you so much.
Jeff made the trek up here to Sweet Studio on this beautiful
did.
fall day.
He did, absolutely.
And now-
guys,
now-
real quick. Oh, go ahead, Sweets.
What is the G in Studio
Yeah,
G?
what is that?
I got to know. Everybody has to know. Everybody's been asking and calling and sending in emails. What is the
Oh,
G?
G.
Goofball?
Should I reveal it? It's like 50 Cent. Why 50 Cent? It's Studio G. That's why G. You know what I mean?
Okay,
No,
all right.
garage. I'm in my garage, guys.
There it is. There it is. The secret's
Garage.
out. The secret is out.
G for garage.
But that's his episode. Keep it all to yourself and don't share that.
We
Nobody
won't
else
tell
knows.
us, so
Well,
your
Studio-
secret's safe.
Don't tell
Studio
anyone.
54 was taken already, so Edward
Yeah.
Listen, I'm in here by myself, guys. I'm alone. I'm smoking cigars. My
the way
wife
we
won't
like
even
it.
come in here.
It is sad. It's
That's
sad.
the way
It's
we like
very
it.
sad.
So sad. If you're out there and you're not doing anything, you should call Ed,
That's
Jersey
right.
Ed, in Studio G. Give him some company. How can they reach you?
What's that
Ed?
number, Ed?
617-379-1163. Call me, and I'll even answer it on the air, guys, if it rings at that number.
It's
or
really
email
sad.
Email me
Yeah.
at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com.
That's right.
I won't answer that, but I'll answer the phone.
Right.
But anyways, and also just real quick, while we're giving out information, just a reminder about our Friends in Recovery online 12-step meetings. They're noon and 7 p.m. Eastern time daily. If you go to our Friends in Recovery, a community of support, or Friends in Recovery podcast Facebook page, the details will be all there. Real quick, our guest today is going to be Wynne Stallings. She's the owner of SoulSpring Counseling. And we're going to be talking to her in a little bit here. But I just want to see how you guys are doing up there in the studio. You guys know how I'm doing in Studio G now. How about Sweet Studio? How you guys doing? How you doing?
We're doing just fine, eh?
Yeah, we're doing
Just
great.
fine. Beautiful fall day,
This show's going to be really messed up, guys.
unlike any other show we've done.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's why Joe Rogan wants us all on as guests. All right.
It is good. It is good to have a sense of humor. One of the characteristics of resilient people is the sense of
That's
humor.
right. That's right. Most comedians, when you read about them, I was just reading a good article about Jerry Seinfeld, and they asked him who he liked. Who was his model? Who did he model himself after? And they gave him three choices. They gave him the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, and of course, I just read the article 2 days ago, and I forget the third one. But anyway, oh, I know, it was Abbott and Costello.
It was sweet.
It was Abbott and Costello,
Yeah.
and the reason he liked Abbott and Costello is because they played to the people more. Like they would talk back and forth, and of course the famous "Who's on first," And I
don't know.
No, he's second base. So
Well, that's what podcasts are about, is like talking to the people, being out there. It gives us a voice. Recovery now has a voice, which is really cool. You can Google, podcasts and recovery, and like on our last show that we were talking about, that this is another good way of not being isolated, is getting on shows like this. There's even shows out there in when we were doing our podcast pick of the weeks, was AA meetings. Sometimes you can get on there, and
Right.
now obviously Zoom is the big thing, but there's all kinds of stuff. The Zoom stuff is great. Podcasts. Podfather, I'm so happy that we decided to do this. This is our going on our third year. Third year, and first full year for our other show, Sweets. We moved into a new studio, and I think the production is just amazing now. It's giving our listeners a lot more, man, with all this. Visually, definitely. If you're a visual person, turn on the YouTube. turn on the YouTube thing, okay?
Yeah, the button, the satellite. Put on the satellite.
Put on the
But
satellite.
I still am a firm believer that the statistics I heard is that most people listen to podcasts, they don't watch them. But that being said, I know you change your shirt every episode and everything. And
Didn't
the
we
good
have
news is
4,000 views on one of those?
Yeah, I think you did. Right,
Yeah.
4,000. That's right.
4,000 views on one of these episodes.
But it was just kind of creepy. He
Yeah.
changed his shirt and his tattoos everywhere. He's got the
Yeah.
podcast tattoo.
Carl, I got sober pod
Right.
tattoo, okay,
He's got
guys?
a picture of him and Carl in a
Look at
heart.
each other.
There's a big heart around them.
I thought it was a band, and he's like, "No, it's a podcast." I'm like, "You got 4 people on you?"
God.
By
Well,
the way,
anyways,
I went to college with Jerry Seinfeld.
Did
you
you?
did.
I did.
Columbia, right?
Well, Queens College, undergrad, Columbia for graduate school. And I knew who he was. We were not guys that hung out together, but, I was friendly with him. I would say hello to him.
Right. Certainly a
Had
very
I known.
successful man.
yeah. Right church, wrong pew. I grew up in
Exactly.
Sayreville, New Jersey, where Bon Jovi was from. And I always say, right church, wrong pew. He lived about 2 miles away from my house. I'm like,
Well, that's funny because Mike was friends with Whitey Bulger.
That's right. That's right. And Mike Chiklis, too. Don't forget.
there you go.
The
Real quick,
commish.
guys, I'm gonna read a bio on Wynne. We're gonna bring her in. Why I'm reading Sweets will bring her in, but I want to introduce Wynne Stallings, the owner of SoulSpring Counseling. Wynne is a Florida licensed psychotherapist and a certified addictions professional with 20 years of professional counseling, program development, and clinical management experience. She has seen and experienced the damage that unhealthy relationships, compulsive behaviors, and poor conflict resolution can do to an individual's self-esteem, core beliefs, emotional stability, and behavioral choices. Wynne's goal is to help you live a life that you truly love. Wynne has treated male inmates and youthful offenders in psychiatric facilities, as well as teens and adults in substance abuse rehabs. She has worked with all of these populations in both outpatient and inpatient settings. Over the years, her skill set grew to include program development, family program facilitation and development, and staff development and curriculum development, particularly in the areas of family systems in treatment. Through her years of experience, Wynne has grown passionate and adept at helping couples and families learn to speak as well as to listen to each other, to set appropriate boundaries, and to find ways to have fun together. A public speaker, she is quite knowledgeable of the addicted family systems, including how families of origin dysfunction sets the stage for families of creation challenges. Sorry, I have that underlined too. Wynne is available to consult with families and other professionals regarding charting a best option course for managing life when loved one is addictive or dysfunction. Since moving to Palm Beach County in 2005, Wynne graduated with a master's in counseling degree at Palm Beach Atlantic University and earned her LMHC and her CAP credentials. She's also qualified supervisor for registered mental health and marriage family interns. She is certified in the Myers-Briggs type inventory and loves to help people discover how they can make their own personal styles work best for them in work, life, and love. In 2013, Wynne started the training process, and it was a long one, to eventually become a certified practitioner in psychodrama. In addition to the talk forms of counseling, psychodrama is an expressive and action-based method to help enhance the relationships between individuals, families, and communities. Wynne has seen significant results using these skills in individuals, couples, and group therapy. Wynne Stallings, welcome to the show, and that's quite a bio you have there. Jeff, this is.
I guess if you live long enough, you can keep adding to it, right?
I guess so. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Jeff, this is going to be your show. You know, I don't understand any of that. So, Jeff, welcome to the Jeff Zeizel show.
Thank you, Ed. Well, actually, I think it's the Wynne Stallings show.
Yes, exactly. So, Wynne, tell us a little bit about what all that means.
Oh my goodness. Which part should I start with? I've been around at least 2 decades in the field, I actually started off as a therapist in a male prison in a substance abuse therapeutic community. So that was my first real job. And from there, I went to work with male inmates at the Florida Department of Corrections. But I needed additional training or school to become a licensed therapist. So that's what brought me down to Palm Beach Atlantic. And I got my master's degree there. And since then, I have primarily been working with addicts and in all levels of care, except detox. And I've worked with teens and adults, but my passion grew to work with families, primarily because I see that families are extremely overlooked in their treatment. They are a huge part of co-creating an addict's problem, co-sustaining an addict's problem, and as a result, they are a huge part of the solution. But in traditional treatment models, families do not get the attention that they need and deserve, as well as the addict needs and deserves. So that is where my passion has moved toward.
You know what's interesting is that you're so right on target, because I remember many years ago seeing a gentleman who had a substance abuse disorder, and he was a highly functional guy, ran like an ad agency in a large city, very successful, made a lot of money. And this was a number of years ago where, it was not uncommon to go up with like the 3 martini lunch. You would take a client, you'd sign the contract, and they had very large advertising clients like Ford automobiles and large universities and manufacturing companies. So it was like a very high stake game. And these guys would drink all the time. It's sort of like that TV show Mad Men. The martini lunch was sort of the state of the art. So this guy continues to drink. Life becomes, uncontrollable. And his wife ends up taking over all the day-to-day operations, but he was still successful. And he ends up going to rehab. And meanwhile, the family is in shambles due to his, substance abuse disorder. He goes away for treatment. He comes back. He's the hero. Everyone loves him. You're doing so great. They want to build statues for him on Park Avenue. Meanwhile, the wife is chopped liver. She's held the fort for 20 years. You mentioned 2 decades. For 2 decades, she held the family together. The kids managed to go to school. They graduate. They're dealing with their own lives. She's done everything. He goes to rehab. They want to have a parade for him, and she is so hurt and angry. And he was a bit of a narcissist anyway. So all of a sudden, the family just sort of blows up. And I started seeing the family after that. And we forget how much the family goes through. The guy goes to rehab. He gets better. Everyone thinks he's fantastic, and good for him. Yeah. However, we forget that for every addicted person, there's 6 to 10 people dramatically impacted by that, and they get left on the wayside. So it's fantastic when that you're addressing that need, because those families get forgotten because everyone's so happy the person's in recovery, but they forget about the damage that's been done. There's a lot of casualties and collateral damage that occurs with the disease of addiction.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Lynn, I have a question. You worked in male prisons. I was a prison, I guess we used to call them guards. I was a correctional officer when I got out of the Army before I became a police officer.
I thought we used to call them screws.
Yeah, we used to call them screws, right? And and then I end up getting my credentials to be a therapist, and I had a contract with the Sheriff's Department up here in Massachusetts, Middlesex County Sheriff's Department, and I was like the EAP for the Sheriff's Department employees, not for the inmates. So I guess my question to you, and I hear it all the time, but only people that have been in the field would really understand this or believe it. Would you say that most of the clients that you treated at the male prisons that you worked at had some type of addiction? What percentage, like between 1 and 100%? What percentage would you say of the men you treated had a not only do they have psychological issues, but they had addiction issues.
Well, research shows that about 80% of all inmates are in prison somehow directly related to a substance, whether it's their own use and they're committing crimes to sustain the use, or whether they're selling, or whether they're under the influence while they commit their crime, or some combination therein. So it's a very high percentage.
It's very high. Yep.
Podfather with the prison questions. Good job, Podfather. But that's amazing. Like how you guys, same thing with you, Podfather. You guys started in the prison community and worked your way into what you see. Okay, so everybody's in prison, but what brought them there? And it sounds like both you, Podfather, and you, Wynne, went into the regular population, and tried to help out the families. I'm a firm believer that, like Jeff was saying, the families don't get fixed. And with addiction, there's the cog in the wheel goes perfectly when it's either broken or working, or a good or a good family. But when you pull that addict out, that cog is going to be fixed, and now it's not going to mesh right. So now you have to fix the whole family. And I'm a firm believer in that too. Just like you guys were saying, if you don't fix the family, that addict's coming back in.
That's right. And
he's going to relapse. Probably, I would give it almost 100%. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but just from seeing and working in the field all these years, is that if the family doesn't get help, or that addict himself doesn't remove himself from the family and stay away from the family, there's a good chance they're going to relapse.
And on the other side of that, I'm a firm believer that once you are sober and your family has been supportive, and you maintain sobriety with the help of the family, even if they're not involved physically, they are involved emotionally. And in my own personal life, I'll be sober 34 years next week. I've been married 33 years. So, and I know for a fact if I had ever picked up a drink or a drug in all these years, I'd be out the door. There'd be I've already had my second chance, but before she said I do, I was told this is how it's going to be. And I'm a firm believer that the family plays such an intricate part, and they suffer just as much, sometimes more as well, if there's no success with recovery, right? Would you agree?
It's a good point. When I was wondering, do you ever see situations where the family is invested in the addict, the individual with substance abuse disorders, in maintaining their addiction? Like there's some payoff for them. Do you ever see those circumstances?
Yes, that's pretty common. In fact, it's usually not conscious on their part. Rarely would it be conscious. I'm trying to keep this person addicted for my own benefit. But that's the nature of this family system. It's the nature of a system. So we've kind of already alluded to it, that there's a homeostasis that needs to be maintained. And if you look at the parallels between an addict's development of his or her addiction and the needs that are being met, there is almost always a chief enabler, at least a chief enabler. There are other roles as well that was already mentioned. And there's a psychological need for the chief enabler to enable the addict, almost always unconscious to the enabler. Right. And that is it's the denial of the family that makes helping the addict so difficult, because as long as they're willing to continue to enable the addict, even if it's on an unconscious level, it's very difficult to get that addict the help they need until a major crisis happens, and there's a lot of damage, and then that crisis blows denial out.
It is interesting. But I'm sorry. I was just to say, and sometimes you see that how the needs of the enabler are so pronounced that for the addict to get healthy, all of a sudden they have to relinquish power. They're making the decisions. They're in charge of where the family is going to go on vacation. They're writing the checks on the checkbook, because the impaired individual is so dysfunctional he can't do it. All of a sudden, there's a power shift, and all the systems are having to realign. The whole structure sort of has to, reconfigure itself. And you're right, there's a big investment unconsciously by and large, but not always, but most of the time it is. Right. Quite interesting.
And you see a lot of divorce and separation in early recovery, a year or so. I know in law enforcement field, I've treated many police officers, correctional officers, and you have too, Jeff. There's a huge number of divorce and separation in recovery, successful recovery, as well as recovery that's not successful, because just what you just said, because all of a sudden there's a power change.
When I was going to ask you, so when you're working with a family, can you walk us through like what you do with them? What are some of the steps? What's the initial interaction, and what's the end goal?
Good question.
Absolutely. Well, the end goal, obviously the starting point depends on whether I'm working within the treatment center context or whether I'm working in an outpatient context, which is where my business is. So if the client is already in treatment, then the end goal is to help provide enough information that family members buy into the need for their own care and their own needs for aftercare. If the client is still actively using, then it's the same thing. Give enough information so that the family members recognize how they are contributing to the addict's sustained use, and provide motivational strategies that they will do what you just mentioned. Let go of control, let the addict suffer his or her consequences. And there's a lot more at the outpatient level before an addict gets treatment. There's a lot more emotional work. There's a lot of emotional work with families in treatment, but there's a sense of they're safe. The addict's safe. They're in treatment. Before they get there, there's all this fear. If I let go, they're going to be homeless on the street. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And that fear, helping the individual cope with that fear, recognize how that fear is sustaining their own unhealthy behavior, and their unhealthy behavior is sustaining the addict's continued use. Yes. And the challenge as a therapist is I can't guarantee that their worst fear is not going to happen.
Right. It's so true. That's right. So
Wynne, real quick, guys, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, Wynne, I want to talk to you about how I like how you said I help you live a life that you truly love. And I want to get into some of the psychodrama. I think that's pretty cool, too. I want to maybe get into that after the break here. Podfather?
Friends in Recovery podcast. We'll be right back.
Thanks, guys.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first, that connects you to technology, to each other, and to other agencies. Built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only congressionally authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery. Welcome back to the Friends in Recovery Addiction Recovery podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, Genesis House, for supporting this show, along with individuals in recovery and the people that love them. Friends in Recovery Community of Support holds events across the country sponsored by Genesis House, in Palm Springs, Florida, Marlton, New Jersey, Newtown, Connecticut, and Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. The Friends in Recovery Addiction Recovery podcast is powered by your likes, follows, subscribes, and shares. And please be sure to do us a favor and leave us a 5-star review.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. FriendsRecoveryPodcast.com. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
And I'm Jersey Ed here in Studio G.
Jeff Zeizel.
Yes, and Sweet's producer extraordinaire, lurking
Yes.
and working
On
in
the
background.
controls.
Looking and working on the
Yes, on the knob.
Real quick, before we bring our guest back in, Wynne Stallings, I want to just say hello to everybody at SoberPod, guys. You know, they always give us a nice shout out. SoberPod is a wonderful show as far as you know, they really get into the 12 steps big time. They really kind of do a deep dive into it. And I want to say hello to our friends Carl, Ellen, Steve, and Chelsea over there. Turn the dial over to the right a little bit, get SoberPod. Make sure you mention us, that we sent you over there. And
That's right.
You know, they always say hello to us. And
California Dreaming. That's what I like to call
California, they're from
That's
California.
it.
Yeah, they have a
That's
really good show,
That's right.
guys. So really, just take
they
a
do.
listen to
They
it.
do.
So anyways.
Great show.
So Wynne Stallings from SoulSpring Counseling, a great guest, and we were talking a little bit about families and everything. And before the break, Wynne, psychodrama. What is psychodrama? And Jeff, I'm sure you know what it is too, but let's get it from the guest and why she studied psychodrama and added it to her plethora of stuff that she has that I had to read for 10 minutes. So, and you guys know I hate reading that stuff.
But we enjoy it.
Welcome back, Wynne.
Thank you. So psychodrama, I think the simplest way to describe it for a non-clinical person is it is a therapeutic use of improv to heal individuals, couples, families, and groups. So it is a blend of drama and therapy. Unlike improv, which is completely self-spontaneous, psychodrama is, and they use drama terms, is directed by the therapist. You could, for the non-clinical person, it is role play completely maxed out. There are many uses of it. But for our purposes, it's when a client is stuck, we can use psychodrama to bring in another individual or an object, and we enroll them, put them in a role, and then the client can have a dialogue between him or herself and the role. And by doing so, the client can get a catharsis, can gain insight, can gain empathy, can get various forms of breakthroughs that talk therapy alone often is not able to accomplish, because the individual is in action. And whenever we're in action, it allows us to think outside of our own box.
Right.
So you're actually playing a role of something, and you're acting something out, which in turn, hopefully that'll be acted out in real life. Is kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the goal, is to make a therapeutic shift in the office that can then generalize to the person's life. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
You know, I remember when I was in grad school, we used to have to do role plays, and everyone hated them. However, you really learned a lot.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing a couple in my office, and I said, we're going to try something. And I'm not trained in psychodrama, but I said, we're going to try something where there will be a reversal of roles. So the wife, who was the enabler, became the identified patient as the addicted person. The husband, who was actually the person abusing substances, became the enabler. And it was remarkable how they finally sort of understood each other's position. And there was, it was the beginning of further work, but it was like the light bulb went off for both of them. They finally understood why she was so pissed off at him, but could never say it. So it's wonderful opportunities to sort of get people to look internally and see what else may be going on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that people are open to it, or do they resist doing it?
For me, it just kind of depends on the client. When I do my work in my private practice, a lot of it depends on my therapeutic rapport with the client. And if they trust me and I say, you know what, let's try something. Let's give this a shot. Usually if I have the client's trust, they'll go for it. Right. And I kind of tend to gauge how open somebody might be to doing that. Now, when I've worked in treatment centers in recent years, my specific role has been psychodrama. So there was, so they knew what to expect on a certain level. And then my job was just simply to, there's something called a warm-up in psychodrama, which is certain activities that help clients lower their guard, and they get literally warmed up to being a little bit more vulnerable. And so one of the goals of the psychodramatist is to gauge how warm somebody is before we can push them into a deeper level of vulnerability.
So you're not going to have somebody walk into your office and say, "Hey, Bob, how you doing? Sit down, put this hat on, and let's act this out." It's not going to happen.
Be a 15-year-old. So when you must like the show, The Kaminsky Method, then.
I'm not familiar, but I'm hearing about it.
It's a comedy, actually. It's a great show with Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin, and Michael Douglas plays a sort of over-the-hill actor who runs an acting school in Los Angeles, and he uses a method called the Kaminsky Method. And it's actually, it has all these sort of anecdotal stories, but in the show, his one of his kids has an addictive. His best friend is Alan Arkin, and one of the kids in the family has a terrible addictive disorder. So all these things get played out, but it's really remarkable how the things that you're talking about, they actually show in the show. Because I always say people who want to do psychodrama, they probably have like a, underlying sort of a desire to sort of be a actor perhaps, because they like the opportunity. Because acting is really about unconscious stuff coming out. So, and you got to get into the role, and it takes some courage. I think you have to be willing to put it all out there, and that, as you had said earlier, that if they trust you, they're more comfortable doing that.
Yeah. Wynne, I want to talk about your goal, because we have a couple minutes left here. Your goal to help you live a life that you truly love. Can you touch on that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. People don't come to therapy because they're living the life that they love. They come to therapy because they're stuck somehow. Mm-hmm. And it is my belief that there are obstacles, perhaps implanted through our family of origin, that were no fault of our own as kids, that we got messages and poor coping skills that have limited us as individuals. And so when we become adults, this is how addiction and codependency finds its way to life, is because of oftentimes through the messages that we got as kids. So I believe that no one has to suffer if they don't want to. And if someone wants to live a fuller life, if they want to let go of these obstacles, if they want to take risks, if they want to maximize their life, to me, that's one of the most exciting things we can do in our lives. And so if I can be a part of helping someone do that, I'm on board.
Great.
Great. What a great concept. People don't come to us because things are going wonderful, and sometimes you forget. I'm very fortunate. I work in an office where there are 4 women. We all rent space. We're all independent. But I watch them. I watch their the way they greet their clients, the way they work with. Some of them work with teens, and I work with mostly adults or young men. But I've learned a lot just by their body language, and they could be having the worst day. I had one of my associates, her son just died. He was 22. He died of a horrific cancer. And right before he died, he knew he was dying. He married his girlfriend that he met in Dana-Farber cancer treatment center, and they got married, and the local newspaper wrote a nice article about it. But I watch her and how she got through this, and I've just learned so much from watching these women. And I just think that a couple of them do role playing, and it's really interesting when you're not doing that, but to see the success that they've had, and just her as an individual who's going through this horrible time in her life. And you would think that everything was all right with her, just the way she handled it. And man, I'll tell you, I just I don't know. It just really opened my eyes, and made me want to be a better therapist as well.
I think one of the underlying themes in all our work is that it's like the Buddhists say that life is all about suffering. So when we accept the fact that life is really hard, then we have to work towards making it less hard and make it better. And the work that you do, Wynne, is really a lot about that, because you grow up in a dysfunctional family. Life is really hard, and that's all they know. For a young person with an addictive family system, they actually think every family is like that, so they accept it. It won't get better. This is how it is. But they come to see you, or people like ourselves, they realize that it can get better. And all the strategies and the techniques and the protocols, really get them to sort of look internally and say, wait a second, I can actually speak up and I can say something. And what would happen if I challenge my father or mother, or tell them I don't like them doing this? Please stop. They've never had permission to even do that. So it's remarkably powerful.
Well, guys, we could talk about this probably for 4 more shows, literally. And I got 1,000 questions I can ask, but I'm getting the high sign from the producer that it's just about that time. Right. Wynne, real quick, can you give us a phone number or a website or something for SoulSpring Counseling, SoulSpring Counseling, and so people can get a hold of you and maybe have direct questions to you? Absolutely,
thank you. Yeah, we just completed our website redesign, so I'd love to send people to the website. It's www.soulspringflorida.com, SOUL Spring SPRING, Florida spelled out.com, and our phone number 561-463-3078.
Well, you've been a great guest, Wynne.
Wynne Stallings, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll follow up with, I want to get in self-esteem, behavioral, compulsive behaviors. We can get all next show that we bring you on. So Wynne Stallings, thank you very much. And guys, have you guys ever done psychodrama with your clients, or have you ever played that? That was pretty fascinating. I wish we could have went more into that. But is it something that you guys seen in your practice, Podfather and Jeff, up there?
Not mine. I've done some role playing, and I have a real quick story. I had a kid in my office, very disrespectful to his mother. She would take him to every session, and I mean really disrespectful. Talked down to her, used profane language. Just really rude. And the third time he was in, I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, hey, listen, I really don't like the way you're talking to your mother. I said, you should really have a little more respect. I said, if I was to get up now and grab your mother and start slapping her and pushing her, I said, what would you do? He said, I'd help you. I would do the same. And I said, what do you mean you'd help me? I thought he was going to say it'd jump on me or something, Yeah. Well, she probably deserves it, And the deep-seated disrespect he had from his mother was coming from his father. His father treated the mother the same way. So that's as close as I've come.
Yeah. Sometimes I think one of the things you had said, Wynne, earlier, which was actually very helpful in terms of the larger picture, is that sometimes you have patients who are stuck, and you got to try something where they're unstuck. So I had this couple, I was seeing them for a very long time, and I just said to them, I want you to get up and switch seats. And a simple little sort of adjustment in the office, all of a sudden things change slightly. So, sometimes we got to think out of the box a little. But I'm not trained in that area, so I think it's a fascinating area to learn about.
And I've never experienced that in a kind of psychodrama, but I can see how it works, because sometimes when I'm talking to a client on the phone, I'll practice with them saying, yes, I do want to come into treatment. Yes, it's, because some of these guys are afraid to say, yes, I need help, or yes, and you have to practice it with them sometimes. And, that's about my extent with it all, even in personal life. But I think that's pretty cool. It's just another way, I guess, guys, to look at your life, another way to understand your life, another way to, kind of, figure things out. And speaking of psycho drama, Sweets.
Wow. I love the introduction. Thank you. Thank you for that.
What
can I help you with today, Ed?
I stuttered. Have you, I know you're involved in the recovery field too. What's your thoughts on this psychodrama?
So I've never experienced it as a part of personal therapy, but as a professional, I did a professional weekend at a treatment program, and they one of the modalities that they practiced there was psychodrama, and they had us all participate in it as a group. And it was an extremely interesting experience, and I can definitely see how that and some of the other tools that people, professionals bring to the table can help you break through, different barriers. I don't think that it worked for everybody, but there were, a group of 10 people and 5 or 6 people had a really significant experience, and I'm sure that there are other modalities that would have hit the other 5 or 6 that didn't get it from that. So,
Well, Ed, as usual, you got another unbelievably wonderful guest. I don't know how you do it. You outdo yourself week by week.
Thank you, Pod.
Yeah, Wynne was definitely a great guest.
Yeah,
definitely have to have her on again.
Guys. And Jeff, thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Thank you, Jeff.
We really appreciate it with all your words of wisdom and your understanding of the field. We really appreciate you, Jeff. So, right. Podfather.
Hey, Friends in Recovery podcast.
Stay sober, everybody.
Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and for keeping this valuable resource free for our Friends in Recovery community. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. If you can't get enough of Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, you can catch them on Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast, available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube.